Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, see if we can share the screen. Okay, the founder. We all see the founder? Very good. So let's close this one. This is something on Gurudeva, founder, that I just pulled together for a Zoom presentation that's in about a month from now to an interfaith group. So I thought you'd all enjoy seeing it. It uses some of the photographs from the back of Guru Chronicles. So it's designed for somebody who doesn't know who Gurudeva is, but the photos are kind of charming. Satguru Savaya Subramanya Swami, affectionately known as Gurudeva, was born in California in 1927 and grew up near Lake Tahoe. Orphaned at age 11, he was raised by a family friend who had spent years in India and who brought him into the culture and beliefs of Hinduism. Trained in classical Eastern and Western dance and in the disciplines of yoga, he became the premier dancer of the San Francisco Ballet at age 19. The height of his career, he renounced the world, and in 1947, he sailed to India in quest of his spiritual master. In a remote Sri Lankan cave, he fasted and meditated till he burst into enlightenment. Soon after, he met Shiva Yogaswami, who gave him the name Subramanya and initiated him into Hindu monasticism. From then on, the great truths flooded through him like a torrent. The nature of reality, metaphysical principles, and methods for facing life's challenges were obvious to him. What philosophers struggled to explain in complex theories, he articulated in simple language from his own experience. Ultimately, the cream of his inspired talks became the 3,000-page trilogy of Dancing, Living, and Merging with Shiva, the first cogent, comprehensive expression of monistic Saiva Siddhanta in the English language. Powerful purpose drove his every effort like the rhythm of a vigorous dance. He traveled widely to uplift Hindu communities on every continent, represented his religion at global conferences, and helped establish 37 temples worldwide. An extraordinary mystic, Gurudeva had many visions of the deities. He read clairvoyantly from inner plane scriptures and created his own language, Shum, to map for others the profound states he encountered in meditation. Gurudeva was loved by all who met him, Hindus, leaders of all lineages, island neighbors, and ordinary folks. He saw the divine in every person and taught them to see the divine in themselves. To devotees everywhere, the graceful 6'2" white-haired guru was the embodiment of Lord Shiva himself. Gurudeva passed in November 2001. However, from the inner world, he continues to guide in magical ways all who embrace his teachings. His light lives on in their spirit and their striving for truth. And there's his morning coffee cup there in his left hand. So very nice, huh? Just kind of a charming introduction that I just took the text and the photos and put it together. And we're finishing up our topic, Introduction to Hinduism. This is our third session to remind us how we're looking at it. This material is designed for presenting Hinduism to a group in particular, or also it can be modified to present it in a discussion with others who have questions about Hinduism. The points are all points you know, but you may have forgotten a few, and there may be some ideas on how to present some that you hadn't thought of. So in that regard, it could be helpful. Oh, we have the nature of the world. We went through the nature of God and the nature of the soul last time. From the Hindu perspective, the world is the place where our destiny is shaped, our desires fulfilled, and our soul matured. Without the world known as Maya, the soul could not evolve through experience. In the world, we grow from ignorance into wisdom, from darkness into light, and from a consciousness of death to immortality. The whole world is an ashram in which we are all evolving spiritually. Yoga Swami's statement. We must love the world, which is God's creation. Those who despise, hate, and fear the world do not understand the intrinsic goodness of all. The world is a glorious place, not to be feared. So that's worth a comment. Basically, the world is whatever we make it. So you've heard me say this before. To the fun-loving teenager, it's a place where you party on the weekends. To the businessman, it has the sole purpose of providing him or her an opportunity to make money. For the professional, it's a place to excel at your skill. For a scientist, a place to learn new information, etc. For the spiritual person, it's an ashram, meaning when we go out in the world, we behave in a way that we're making spiritual progress by how we interact with people, by how we perform the tasks we do. So it's subjective. What the world is totally subjective. And by our attitude toward it and our actions in it, we turn it into a spiritual environment. So very good point. So we don't want to avoid the world. That's one approach to spirituality. The world is bad, I'll stay home as much as possible. I just go out and come back because the world's a terrible place. Well, parts of it are, but trying to avoid those parts. Don't go shopping in the wrong parts of town, but we don't want to look at it. It's what we make it. And there's people out there, and through people, we receive our karma back. Through people, we have opportunities to be of service, etc. The Vedas advise, behold the universe in the glory of God and all that lives and moves on earth. Leaving the transient, find joy in the eternal. There is a false concept commonly found in academic texts that Hinduism is world negating. This depiction was foisted upon the world by 19th century Western missionary Orientalists, traveling in India for the first time and reporting back about its darkest and strangest aspects, not unlike Western journalists tend to do today. The wild-looking, world-renouncing yogis taking refuge in caves, denying the senses and thus the world, were of sensational interest, and their world abandonment became, through the scholar's eyes, characteristic of the entire religion. Hinduism's essential time-tested monastic tradition makes it no more world-negating than Christianity or Buddhism, which likewise have traditions of renunciate men and women living apart from the world in spiritual pursuits. That's a great photograph. While Sanatana Dharma proudly upholds such severe ways of life for the few, it is very much a family-oriented faith that supports acquisition of wealth, the pursuit of life's pleasures, and the full engagement in society's spiritual, intellectual, and emotional joys. The vast majority of followers are engaged in family life, firmly grounded in responsibilities in the world. Young Hindu adults are encouraged to marry. Marriages are encouraged to yield an abundance of children. Children are guided to live in virtue, fulfill duty, and contribute to the community. The emphasis is not on self-fulfillment and freedom, but on duty and the welfare of the community as expressed in the phrase. Oh boy, got a Hindi phrase. Bahujan Hitaya, Bahujan Sukhaya, meaning the welfare of the many and the happiness of the many. Hindu scripture speaks of three worlds of existence: physical, subtle, and causal. Physical plane, the world of gross or material substance in which phenomena are perceived by the five senses. It's most limited, least permanent, and most subject to change. Subtle plane, mental emotional sphere that we function in through thought and feeling, and reside in fully during sleep and after death. It is the astral world that exists within the physical plane. Within is a key word. Causal plane pulsates at the core of being, deep within the subtle plane. So you keep going within. And what's within is actually bigger than what's without. Interesting contradiction. It is a superconscious world where the gods and highly evolved souls live. That's nice. And can be accessed through yoga and temple worship. Oh, two ways to get into the inner world. One is the theistic way, temple worship, and the other is the monistic way, yoga. Hindus believe that God created the world and all things in it. He creates and sustains from moment to moment every atom of the seen physical and unseen spiritual universe. Everything is within him. He is within everything. God created us. He created time and gravity, the vast spaces and the uncounted stars. Creation is not the making of a separate thing, but an emanation of himself. That is the Vedic idea of creation. God creates, constantly sustains the form of his creations and absorbs them back into himself. According to Hinduism, the creation, preservation, and dissolution of the universe is an endless cycle. Creation and preservation portion of each cycle is a period of approximately 309 trillion years, at which point Mahapralaya, the great dissolution, occurs. So if there's nothing, you can't have time. So there's no time given for Mahapralaya. Mahapralaya is the absorption of all existence, including time, space, and individual consciousness, all the worlds and their inhabitants in God. The return of all things to the source, sometimes likened to the water of a river returning to the sea. Then God alone exists until he again issues forth creation. Our next section, Hinduism and practice. 3 pillars: temple worship, scripture, and the guru-disciple tradition. Well, that's an important point there. When we say pillars, it may not communicate the full idea of what's trying to be said. What it means is the fullness of Hinduism has 3 totally separate areas. So someone can just be involved in one of them without the other 2, or involved in 2 without the third. So the temple can just go along without someone being involved in scripture or the guru. Someone can be studying scripture just by itself. Someone could be studying with a guru without scripture or temple. That would be pretty unusual. So there are 3 independent parts of Hinduism, and the ideal to make the maximum progress is you are engaged in all 3 aspects or pillars. Around these, all spiritual disciplines revolve, including prayer, meditation, and ritual worship in the home and temple, study of scripture, recitation of mantras, pilgrimage to holy places, austerity, selfless service, generous giving, good conduct, and the various yogas. Festivals and singing of holy hymns are dynamic activities. Temples hold a central place of importance in Hindu life, whether they be small village sanctuaries or towering citadels. They are esteemed as God's consecrated abode. In the temple, Hindus draw close to the divine and find a refuge from the world. God's grace permeating everywhere is most easily known within these holy precincts. That's Penang photo. It is in this purified milieu where the three worlds, physical, astral, and causal, commune most perfectly that devotees can establish harmony with God, the gods, and their angelic helpers, called devas. Traditional temples are especially sanctified, possessing a ray of spiritual energy connecting them to the celestial worlds. That's the best I could find, was a rainbow behind Yerevan Temple. There you can't find photos of rays of spiritual energy to temples. Temple rituals performed by Hindu priests take the form of puja. We all know what puja is. Personal worship during puja may be an expression of festive celebration of important events in life, of adoration and thanksgiving, penance and confession, prayerful supplication and request, or contemplation at the deepest levels of superconsciousness. Said another way, it's non-congregational. I remember at one Kumbhabhishekam, I was supposed to give a talk, which I did, but there were about 4 or 5 other things going on at the temple, in the temple at the same time, very loud. And I had maybe my share of the group, maybe 30 or 40% of the group was listening to the talk, but others had 4 or 5 other activities going on at the same time, which is the nature of a Hindu temple. In other words, in some places of worship, everybody is doing exactly the same thing at the same time, which is what congregational means. Sometimes that happens in Hindu temples, but not generally. Particularly in larger temples, you have multiple activities going on. Some people are very happy, some people are very sad, etc. And so it's a diversity of activities. That's what this is trying to point out. Okay, then we get the murti is the form through which the deity projects power. We all know that. Devout Hindus adore the image as the deity's physical body, knowing that the god or goddess is actually present and conscious in it during puja, aware of devotees' thoughts and feelings, and even sensing the priest's gentle touch on the mantle or stone. So just at that time, during the puja. So then priests have a variety of temples. Temples have a variety of priests. Some have just a few, some have a lot. That's quite a few Shivacharyas there. Nice photograph. So then Gurudev explains about the pujari. It's not like in a Western situation where the priest or minister can stand between you and God and you have to go through the priest or minister. In this case, the priest or minister is the servant of God, just like you are. And you're just doing different things. He's performing the ceremony and you're performing the worship. And then it says we live near a temple. Ideally, we visit every week. That's a very interesting line on my screen. Huh? I wonder how that got there. So you see my map of Temple. This is actually a city called Temple in Arizona. It's the only way I could have a map with Temple on it, since I don't create things from scratch. So the idea is to live near a temple and be able to attend weekly. For the Hindu, the underlying emphasis of life is on making spiritual progress while also pursuing one's family and professional duties and goals. He's conscious that life is a precious, fleeting opportunity to advance, to bring about inner transformation, and he strives to remain ever conscious of this fact. For him, work is worship, and his faith relates to every department of life. So that's an important point. It's understated here. But there's an integration. Religion permeates everything we do, our family life, our professional life, going to school, everything we do is permeated with our religion in terms of how we do it and why we do it. There's no division between sacred and secular. Hinduism's spiritual core is its holy men and women. Millions of sadhus, yogis, swamis, vairagis, saints, and Satgurus who have dedicated their lives to full-time service, devotion, and God realization, and to proclaiming the eternal truths of Sanatana Dharma. So there we are in Melbourne. That was a number of years ago. Hindu presentation in Melbourne, Australia, Parliament of World Religions. In day-to-day life, perhaps no facet of Dharma is as crucial as the spiritual teacher or Satguru. These holy men and women are a living spiritual force for the faithful. They are inspirers and interpreters of personal guides who, knowing God themselves, can bring devotees into God consciousness. Hindus believe that the blessing, whether a look, a touch, or even a thought, coming from such a great soul, helps them in their evolution, changes patterns in their life by cleaning up areas of their subconscious mind that could not possibly have done for themselves. They further believe that if his Shakti is strong enough, his or her Shakti, and if they are in tune with him or her long enough, they will be empowered to really begin to meditate. In all Hindu communities, there are gurus who personally look after the spiritual practices and progress of devotees. Such preceptors are equally revered, whether they are men or women. Few other religions are women allowed such access to the highest seats of reverence and respect. You could see that at the, which one was it? Millennium Summit of Spiritual and Religious Leaders in UN, year 2000. The number of women there representing Hinduism was quite large, and the other religions had very few. Within the Hindu way is a deeply rooted desire to lead a productive, ethical life following Dharma. Among the many virtues instilled in followers, truthfulness, fidelity, contentment, and avoidance of greed, lust, and anger. Cornerstone of Dharma is ahimsa, non-injury toward all beings. Ahimsa is the way to achieve harmony with our environment, peace between people, and compassion within ourselves. Devout followers tend to be vegetarian and seek to protect the environment, a very timely topic with global warming becoming more and more reality in terms of our atypical storms we're all getting around the world. Many individuals of all faiths are concerned about our environment and properly preserving it for future generations. Hindus share this concern and honor and revere the world around them as God's creation. Their traditions have always valued nature and cared for it. They find it natural to work for the protection of the Earth's diversity and resources to achieve the goal of a secure, sustainable, and lasting environment. Selfless service to God and humanity, known as seva, is widely pursued as a way of softening the ego and drawing close to the divine. Charity, dana, is expressed through myriad philanthropic activities, especially feeding others. Hindus wear sectarian marks called tilaka on their foreheads as sacred symbols, distinctive insignia of their heritage. Rather than burial, they prefer cremation of the body upon death, which quickly releases the soul from its earthly frame, allowing it to continue its evolutionary journey. Perhaps one of Hinduism's most refreshing characteristics is that it encourages free and open thought. Scriptures and gurus encourage followers to inquire and investigate into the nature of truth, to explore worshipful inner and meditative regimens, to directly experience the divine. This openness is at the root of Hinduism's famed tolerance of other cultures, religions, and points of view, encapsulated in the adage, Ekam Sat Vibrat Bahuda Vadanti, meaning truth is one, the wise describe it in different ways. The Hindu is free to choose this path, his way of approaching the divine, and he can change it in the course of his lifetime. There is no heresy or apostasy in Hinduism. Thus, coupled with Hinduism's natural inclusiveness, gives little room for fanaticism, fundamentalism, or closed-mindedness anywhere within the framework of Hinduism. It's been aptly called a threshold, not an enclosure. Radhakrishnan, renowned philosopher and president of India, 1962 to 1967, summarizes in the Hindu view of life. The Hindu recognizes one supreme spirit, though different names are given to it. God is in the world, though not as the world. He does not merely intervene to create life or consciousness, but is working continuously. There is no dualism of the natural and the supernatural. Evil, error, and ugliness are not ultimate. No view is so utterly erroneous, no man is so absolutely evil as to deserve complete castigation. There is no hell, for that means there is a place where God is not, and there are sins which exceed his love. The law of karma tells us that the individual life is not a term, but a series. Heaven and hell are higher and lower stages in one continuous movement. Every type has its own nature which should be followed. We should do our duty in that state of life to which we happen to be called. Hinduism affirms that the theological expressions of religious experience are bound to be varied, accepts all forms of belief, and guides each along his path to the common goal. These are some of the central principles of Hinduism. Hinduism lives today, it is due to them. So I think we can stop there. Okay, so thank you very much.